What if there was a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, that's what we've got. You're listening to C&C Talks.
Hi, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie.
And you're listening to the very first episode of the C&C Talks Podcast.
We release every Tuesday, and we tape a day early, so it is currently Monday, May 2nd of 2022 at around 12 p.m. Pacific Time.
Every week, we discuss politics, world events, and sports. And we're going to jump right into it with Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter.
So Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion.
The sale is expected to go through soon, and one fear that a lot of liberals have, at least, something that conservatives are very excited about, is the potential that Donald Trump gets let back on Twitter.
Donald Trump was banned from Twitter after the inciting insurrection and repeated lies about the election. He was banned in mid-January after the January 6th insurrection.
He claimed last week that he does not want to be invited back on the platform, that he instead wishes to stick to the platform that he created that launched in February, Truth Social, which, as of right now, is actually number one on the App Store. This is after a very rocky launch, to say the least. Devin Nunes, the former Republican congressman, chair of the House Intelligence Committee for a while, resigned his seat from Congress in order to become the CEO of the company. It did not work out too well. Trump posted the day that it was created. He then waited about 2 months before posting his second, they call them truths. This was just saying, I'm back. It was pretty much his second one. That was last week.
Do we know why he hasn't posted that much?
Mostly because it was pretty much a failure, and he does not like to be associated with failure. For example, there was, I guess you could call it waiting list of maybe a couple million people. No one was able to be let in. It said, you're not just another number to us, but it very much seemed like you were just another number to us if you signed up for the platform. It just did not really work. It looks like maybe they're sorting through some of their difficulties now, and they still only have about 2 million people on the platform, which is about 300 million less than Twitter has, so Twitter is a much bigger platform. Besides that, they're pretty much the same thing.
All right. So, Elon Musk has been attacking Twitter's lawyers. Can we get a little bit more of an explanation on that?
Yeah, so Elon Musk, obviously, he just bought Twitter. Some of the first things that he's done has been posting on Twitter some posts about their lawyers for covering up some things. Their lawyers, after that, have gotten attacked by right-wingers. He also posted a graphic that's claimed that the Democrats have become way more extreme since 2008 and left the rest of the country behind in the dust. Here's some more on that. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's an interesting perspective because since 2008, it has been clear that the American political system has obviously been moving away from the center and more towards the radical. But it's an interesting thought to see which party has moved further towards radicalization. So I would like to see what we have for both parties and their examples of being more radical.
Yeah. So the Democrats, obviously, Joe Biden was a big deal, 2008 vice presidential candidate. Right now, he's, of course, the president, so it's pretty much the same. I would say that Democrats in Congress are more, on average, progressive. There's now people in Congress like AOC. On the other hand, there's the Republican Party, who the leader of that party right now incited an insurrection and is currently under investigation for massive fraud in New York and for election crimes in Georgia. He, when president, abused his power to extort a foreign government for political gain. He was just overall super corrupt with how he handled his money during his presidency. Some other Republicans are under investigation for child sex trafficking. signature Republican policies right now are naming a border wall after Donald Trump. That is one of the main things that they are running on in 2022, the midterms, which are coming up in just about 6 months. Also, massive voter suppression bills signed into law in Texas, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, and many other states, as well as their attack on critical race theory, which will remind you is not an actual thing, and on gay people and education, the whole banning of books, and the Don't Say Gay bill, which is now a law, of course, in Florida, and then the culture wars, it's like Dr. Seuss or the green M&M not being sexy, which are just issues that don't really matter to Americans.
They don't really seem relevant to politics, do they?
Correct. I don't think that you would say that there are people that are voting for a candidate based on whether the green M&M is sexy or not.
That is true. So moving to the January 6th investigation, some audio of Kevin McCarthy was released. So can we get some more on that?
Yeah, so Kevin McCarthy, he is on tape saying that he was going to tell Trump to resign. And also that he's telling, this was in a meeting with other Republican House leaders a couple days after the January 6th insurrection. He said that he had been on a phone call with Trump and that Trump had said that he was somewhat responsible. This was first reported by a couple of New York Times journalists for their book, and so they had audio of it, and McCarthy at first denied that any of this was said, and then they released the audio, so it is clear that McCarthy lied about this.
So if this was audio from just after January 6th, what took them like almost more than a year to release it?
Well, I would say that profits are a big factor. I would say that it is irresponsible, at least in my opinion, if you're a journalist and you have your hands on tapes and you got that only through your job as a New York Times reporter to wait to release a book about it. Then other stuff on January 6th. Charlie?
So there several other Twitter accounts have been suspended, and Sean Hannity and Republican members of Congress texting Chief of Staff Mark Meadows asking what they should do and what should be said.
Then this was in between the election of 2020 and the January 6th insurrection. The Republicans, including Sean Hannity, who is allegedly a news anchor, pretty much asked the White House for messaging, which is a huge ethics violation. One more note here on the January 6th investigation. Their committee in the House expects to hold public hearings in June, so be on the lookout for that. Let's move on now to the White House Correspondents' dinner.
So we have a roast of Trump, which we are going to play you the audio of.
This was in Biden's speech at the dinner on Saturday.
It's the first time the president attended this dinner in 6 years. It's understandable. We had a horrible plague, followed by 2 years of COVID.
That was President Joe Biden speaking on Saturday about the fact that he is the first president since Obama to attend the White House Correspondents' dinner. He also went after Fox News. He attacked them for their hypocrisy on vaccines, as well as what we mentioned a minute ago, the Sean Hannity Chief of Staff scandal. Let's play that clip.
Fox News, I'm really sorry your preferred candidate lost the last election. To make it up to you, I'm happy to give my chief of staff to you all so he can tell Sean Hannity what to say every day.
All right. Those were some of the highlights of Biden's speech. Trevor Noah also gave a speech. We're going to skip over that because of time. We highly recommend that you watch the entirety of both Biden's speech and Trevor Noah's speech. They were both excellent.
I believe Trevor Noah's is about 20 minutes long?
Yeah, like 25. So they're long, but well worth the watch.
All right. And DeSantis has been going after Disney in Florida with the Don't Say Gay bill, and and the Florida government has now dissolved that special jurisdiction that Disney has, and DeSantis is currently claiming that Disney will have to pay off the debt that they had, though, can we get a little bit more explanation to this? As far as I am aware, that wouldn't the state have to pay for that debt now that special district has been dissolved?
So a quick reminder, this all started when Disney cut off campaign contributions to Republicans who supported Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. Republicans who supported Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. DeSantis retaliated against them by repealing Disney's self-governing status, pretty much a special district. So Disney's saying that the law can't go through unless Florida is required to assume Disney's $1 billion in debt. Now, DeSantis claims, and likely wrongly, that he's going to make Disney pay off the debt. He said, "Don't worry about it." It's unclear exactly how that would happen, so it's a feud with no clear ending.
Republican Representative Madison Cawthorn decided to bring a loaded gun to an airport and try to get it through security. This is the second time that has happened. And it was tried to brought on as a carry-on, but he was not there was no arrest that was had.
Yeah, again, a loaded gun into an airport, and at least in my opinion, an example, the fact that he was not arrested, he was just ticketed, is a clear example of privilege that a white, wealthy male in power would have. Like, if this was a Muslim here, we would be hearing all this stuff about terrorism and all the rest. And he probably should have gotten arrested. This is a serious crime, especially since it happened the second time. Let's move on.
So now over to our brief world events section. The Russians' invasion of Ukraine continues. Nancy Pelosi visited Kiev on Sunday. Ukraine continues to attempt to evacuate its citizens further to the west and into other places in Europe. And Russian forces continue to make small advances in the east and south. And now we're going to move on to sports. Colin?
All right, this is going to be on a much lighter note than the beginning of the podcast. We're going to start here with the NBA playoffs. They continued. Again, we're taping this Monday, so we don't know the results of Monday's games. Those are the Game 1 of the 76ers Heat series and Game 1 of the Mavericks and the Suns series. We do know yesterday, though, that Game 1 of the Bucks-Celtics series, the Bucks in Boston had a giant win. And then Warriors-Grizzlies was a tremendous game. Draymond Green was ejected around halftime for something that he probably should not have been ejected for. But the Warriors did hold on to win 117 to 116 to take a 1-0 lead in the series in Memphis. Now let's go on to the if we look back at the first round, the Brooklyn Nets elimination from the playoffs. Who do you think is mostly to blame for this elimination?
Well, obviously, as a 7 seed, they were. I would say coming into that, I did think Boston would win. I was surprised though that they did get swept, and I would say if Ben Simmons played in Game 4, I feel like the game would have been possibly even won by Brooklyn. So I would blame him the most for that. They brought him in as part of the trade deal with the 76ers, so I feel like he should have played at all with his time with the team. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not surprised that they lost, because if one of your star players just says, "I don't really want to play," well, then you're going to lose the series.
Yeah, I think, though, your point on the 7 seed was a good point, but also let's look at why they were a 7 seed. I mean, they're obviously a way better team with Kyrie Irving than without. Kyrie Irving made a very selfish decision to not get vaccinated for most of the season. In fact, he's still not vaccinated, and that is... If he was able to play in New York, then he would have definitely been able to. The Nets would definitely have been able to be a much higher seed. So I think that most of the blame has to go on him. Also, I agree with Ben Simmons. And final point, as somebody who is a Warriors fan, I want to gloat a little bit to Kevin Durant. He decided to leave Golden State because where he had won 2 championships, because he wanted to show that he could do it without Steph. it's not working out for him. Before we move on to the NFL draft, a couple of small updates. Joel Embiid injured. He's likely out for Game 1 and Game 2.
So let's get to some predictions. Who do you think is going to represent each conference in the finals, as of right now, knowing what we do know so far?
It pains me to say it. I think that the Suns will manage to go to the finals in the Western Conference. I think that they'll beat the Warriors in the Western Conference finals. In the East, that one's much tougher. I'm going to go with the Bucks again. I think that we are going to get
have a Suns-Bucks rematch?
I think we're going to get a Sun match.
And who's going to win it?
I think it's going to be the Suns.
I agree with that. So let's move on to the NFL draft. So focusing on the Seattle Seahawks, they did not draft a quarterback, but they did pick up a linebacker, a running back, 2 quarterbacks, a defensive end, and a couple of offensive tackles.
Yep. They also picked up a couple of wide receivers. 4 of their 9 picks were from the Big Ten. Now let's look overall at quarterbacks, because it was a really fascinating draft for quarterbacks.
So only 9 quarterbacks were taken overall, but only one of them was in the first 2 rounds.
And there were 4 quarterbacks that were expected to be taken in the first 2 rounds. Those 4 quarterbacks ultimately went to the Steelers, Falcons, Titans, and Panthers. Why do you think there was a lack of quarterbacks drafted?
Well, I will say we do have a lot of, especially in the AFC, we have a large amount of very high-quality quarterbacks. And I will say this is probably a weaker QB class than we usually have. So we'll see what we'll get next year with some improving college talent.
All right. That does make sense. Trayvon Walker, defensive end, was taken number 1 overall. He beat out Aiden Hutchinson, who most people expected to be the number 1 pick, another defensive end. Both defensive end. Trayvon Walker goes to the Jaguars. Hutchinson was selected number 2. He goes to the Lions. Now let's look at soccer.
So, Liverpool, in their quest for the quadruple, they won the League Cup. They won the FA Cup final is on May 14th against Chelsea. Man City versus Real Madrid is going up tomorrow, and Man City is up 3-4 on aggregate.
Yep. It's in the Champions League, and then in the Premier League run-in, Liverpool, 4 games left. They're 1 point back of Man City. Liverpool has Tottenham, Aston Villa, Southampton, and the Wolves left to play. Man City has Newcastle, the Wolves, West Hampton, and Aston Villa. Then, in some big Seattle sports news, the Sounders are hosting the CONCACAF Champions League final on Wednesday. Charlie, what should we know?
So no MLS team has ever won. There was last week's game in Mexico. There was a 2-0 lead for the Pumas, but the Sounders tied it with 2 penalty kicks.
Yeah, both by Ladero, the last one in the 9th minute of stoppage time. Again, this is a big deal because no team from the MLS has ever won. It's, Wednesday night at Lumen Field is the final aggregate, tied up 2-2, a clear home field advantage for the Sounders.
So let's get to the NHL playoffs to end tonight. So it started yesterday. We can't really give you any updates because we're taping this early. So they do start on Tuesday. We're recording this as of Monday. But let's give you a rundown of the matchups.
Yeah, so in the Eastern Conference, in the first round, is the Boston Bruins and the Carolina Hurricanes, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Washington Capitals and the Florida Panthers, and the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Rangers. In the Western Conference, the Nashville Predators, Colorado Avalanche, Dallas Stars and the Calgary Flames, St. Louis Blues, Minnesota Wild, and the LA Kings and the Edmonton Oilers. We will give you full updates on all of that next week.
So, all right, looks like we're out of time. We'll release this episode on the 3rd of May. And just wanted to thank you for listening. Yet again, I'm Charlie.
I'm Colin. Make sure that you subscribe. Thank you so much for listening.